I want to ask you about a few other things. Something the Prime Minister touched on at the end of the news conference about cost of living. That's where he wants his message every day up until the next election. He wants to be able to prosecute that argument every chance he gets ahead of the election, likely April of May of next year. That remains the number one issue by the length of the strait.
Absolutely. And so he's got to talk about it every time there's a microphone anywhere near him. But he's doing that, as is Chalmers. And if they can demonstrate that they can do something about cost of living, keep it under control, it goes a long way to winning an election. By far the most important issue.
Yes, indeed. And if there is a rate cut at some point, that helps them. There is a bit of a stoush between the government and the RBA. Today, the former Treasurer, Wayne Swan, not just a former Treasurer, a very close mentor to Jim Chalmers, he slammed the RBA. He was on the Nine Network and he said, I'm very, very disappointed in what the RBA is doing at the moment. He says, I think the RBA is putting economic dogma over rational economic decision-making, hammering households, hammering mums and dads, causing a collapse in spending. He says they're punching themselves in the face, the RBA, in terms of what they're doing with these rates. What do you make of this row? It's not a direct one-on-one, but certainly the government and those associated to it having a decent crack at the RBA.
Well, I don't think that the RBA should be a body that's immune from criticism. I just don't believe that. The RBA is made up of human beings. Human beings err. And when they err, I think you're entitled to call them out. I don't believe that every decision the Reserve Bank makes is perfect. And I think everyone has a right to stand up and say, hang on, that's just not right. It's a wrong direction for Australia. You've got to be able to say that. And the RBA have got to be big enough and tough enough to accept criticism. And occasionally, when I say accept criticism, actually do something about it. Move the dial just a little bit. And I hope the RBA can take the criticism in that spirit.
Jim Chalmers has said at every point that he defends the independence of the RBA. He's made that clear. He has reiterated that time and again. At the same time, a few subtle digs here and there, saying they're smashing the economy with rates. But I guess from a political perspective, he does need to help lay the foundation for an election pitch when it comes over the next 9 months. And it sounds from what he said to me earlier in the week, there will be a full budget in March to help set up that narrative for the election.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because the narrative the government sets in that March document will have a huge effect on the election. If they can get that right, they're going to be awfully hard to beat. On the other hand, if they stuff it up, out the window they'll go. So, they've got to be very, very careful. But I mean, Chalmers is by nature a careful man. He doesn't shoot from the hip. He's one of those guys who considers things first. So I think he'll pass the test.
Speaking of pragmatic individuals or shrewd, let's say, operators, I've just been looking back at the history of the last couple of weeks in terms of what the Labor Party's doing with its pre-selections in Victoria. Now, Bill Shorten, the reason I'm raising this, Richo, is because Bill Shorten announced his resignation yesterday. They've got to come up with a pre-selection. Whenever that happens, there's a risk of a fight within the party itself, between the left and the right. 3 weeks ago, the Prime Minister requested Paul Erickson to bring the pre-selections into the National Executive. The National Executive are going to make the call on those pre-selections. He might have just had a hint that Bill Shorten was going, and to preempt that, mid-August, Anthony Albanese brings those pre-selections into the National Executive. So they can have whatever fight they want, but they're not making the call on these decisions. So I thought that was quite a shrewd move looking back at it in hindsight.
Oh, yeah, a good move. Look, anything you can do that prevents fighting in public is obviously a very good idea. The old hawk saying, He got a lot of things right, Hawkey. I remember he used to say that if you can't govern the party, you can't govern the country. And he's right about that. And so you've got to be able to show that you're on top of your own party. And I think Albo and Chalmers are doing that pretty well.
What about Shorten? How's he remembered, just finally? I know he's still in the parliament, but what's his legacy?
Oh, the NDIS is his legacy. There's no doubt about that. And what a wonderful piece of social reform it is. Yes, I know it's expensive, but it's had an enormous effect on several million Australians. And I think Bill will always be remembered for that, and so he should be.
He's going to join me in about half an hour. We'll chat about that. Richo, thanks. Appreciate it.